Good morning. We're in John 16, verses 16 through 21 today. And I told you that last verse was a bridge between two significant events. He's just fed the 5,000, and then he's withdrawn to himself up into the mountains when the people want to make him king by force. And then we read this. When evening came, the disciples went down to the lake. So he's left his disciples, the crowd's dispersed. They're resting. Jesus has gone up in the mountains, perhaps to pray. The disciples now go down from the mountain to the lake, where they got into a boat and set off across the lake for Capernaum. By now it was dark, and Jesus had not yet joined them. A strong wind was blowing, and the waters grew rough. And when they'd rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus approaching the boat, walking on the water. And they were frightened. But he said to them, "It is I, don't be afraid." Then they were willing to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the shore where they were heading. Okay, first of all, you should know that 3 of the 4 Gospels capture this story. Mark is the very earliest Gospel. He writes before Matthew and Luke, who use Mark as a reference. John writes an independent Gospel later on. Matthew and Mark tell the story, and so does John. Luke does not tell the story, which I find is interesting on its own right. Each of them tells the story a little bit differently. I'm just going to use John's version to talk about this today. And what we have to say is, first of all, this is humanly impossible. Human beings don't walk on water. And for all the attempts to make the story say he's walking on rocks or a sandbar or they're close to shore, it doesn't hold mustard. You can choose not to believe the story because it's physically impossible for humans to do this, and it is. Or you can say something more is going on, and that here we see Jesus do something we don't ever see him do anywhere else, and that is he seems to manipulate nature not for someone else's benefit, but for his own. At first glance, it seems like he's just trying to get across the lake, and so he's walking on water. But I actually don't think this is for his benefit. I think this is actually for his disciples' benefit. And you may struggle with reading these miracle passages, and at times I do as well, but the reality of it is God, of course, can do such a thing. And so if Jesus is God's Son, it would be humanly impossible for him to do it. And in this case, it seems to, because Jesus empties himself of the ability to do such things, must be God's will. For what reason would God want him to do this? I actually think it's because it's revealing the nature of Jesus' dual identity as Son of God and Son of Man. He is both human, as in a product of Mary, and we would say the Holy Spirit, and he is divine. And most of the time we see Jesus purely operating without his divine attributes, but occasionally here, the Transfiguration, when he does miracles, he seems to be able to tap into the power one would expect him to have as the Son of God. And so I think that this passage is about his disciples seeing Jesus in a brand new light. His disciples seeing Jesus with a much fuller understanding of who he is, which explains to us why they were frightened. And I love it. They were afraid. Jesus said, "It's I, don't be afraid." And it says, then they were willing to take him into the boat. And of course, I love that. Then they were willing, because of course, how does one, somebody walks on water, you would of course be like, what's going on here? And then he calms their fears and joins them on the boat in this passage. Anyhow, it's a beautiful story that plays with the imagination, so let it play with your imagination today. Jesus fully human, Jesus fully God. Grace and peace to you.